The morning we buried my wife. Her millionaire employer called me before the flowers had even left the chapel and said, "Calvin, she left something in my safe. Come to my office now." Then his voice dropped and he added, "Do not tell your daughter. And do not tell your son-in-law. If they know you are coming here, you may not make it home." When I reached his building and saw my daughter arguing with security in the lobby, I understood that my wife's death had not been an accident at all. If you are new here, stay with me, because this story does not go where you think it goes. Drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from, and what time it is where you are right now. And if stories about quiet fathers, family betrayal, and cold justice pull you in, subscribe to Dad's Cold Justice. It may be a small click for you, but it helps this channel more than you know. My name is Calvin Bennett. I am 64 years old. For almost 38 years, I worked as an electrician around Columbus, Ohio, mostly on office buildings, schools, and the kind of strip malls people drive past without thinking twice. My hands are stiff now. My back hurts when it rains. And I still keep a toolbox in my garage even though my knees do not like ladders anymore. Rose worked as the private bookkeeper and office manager for Julian Mercer, the owner of Mercer and Vale Development, a commercial real estate company with offices on East Broad Street in downtown Columbus. Julian was wealthy in the kind of quiet way that old Columbus money sometimes is. He owned parking lots, warehouses, medical office buildings, and half a dozen retail centers, but he still remembered the names of the women at the front desk and sent Christmas baskets to retired employees. The funeral was on a cold Thursday morning, November 6th, at Miller Funeral Chapel on North High Street. The sky looked like wet concrete. The maple leaves outside the chapel had turned dark and slick on the sidewalk, and every person who came in brought the smell of rain and wool coats with them. I stood beside Rose's casket in a navy suit that felt too tight across the shoulders and tried to accept that the woman inside it was my wife. People kept touching my arm and saying they were sorry. I nodded because that is what people do at funerals. But every word sounded like it came from the far end of a hallway. Rose had collapsed 10 days earlier in our kitchen. The doctors called it a sudden cardiac episode. They said her heart rhythm became unstable. They said sometimes these things happen quickly, especially with age. Blood pressure medicine, stress, and a family history of heart trouble. I believed them, because grief makes you tired. And tired people accept the first explanation that lets them breathe. Our daughter Emily sat in the front row with her husband Grant Larkin. Emily was 34, our only child, and Grant was 37. They had been married for 7 years. And from the outside they looked like the kind of couple who had everything planned. Nice clothes, matching watches, a leased white SUV, little smiles that never quite reached their eyes. What most people did not know was that they were drowning in debt. Grant had opened a boutique fitness studio in Dublin 2 years before, and when it failed, he blamed rent, the economy, bad marketing, bad trainers, and everyone except himself. Emily had left her nursing home administrator job to help him run it, and after it closed, neither of them found steady work. They came around more often after that. At first, I thought they were being loving. Sunday dinner became Thursday visits. Thursday, visits became Emily stopping by in the mornings to help Mom stay organized. Grant started offering to take paperwork to the bank, pick up prescriptions, and sort through insurance letters. He always said it with a smile. "You two have done enough for us. Let us help now." During the service, I noticed Emily was not crying. She dabbed her eyes twice with a tissue, but there were no tears on it. Grant kept his phone face down on his knee and glanced at it every few minutes. At one point, he leaned close to Emily and whispered something. Her mouth tightened, and she shook her head once, quick and angry. At exactly 11:38 inches the morning, while the pastor was speaking about Rose's kindness, my phone buzzed inside my jacket. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the name on the screen, Julian Mercer. I stepped into the hallway, away from the music and the soft crying. The carpet swallowed my footsteps. When I answered, Julian did not say hello. "Calvin," he said, and I heard fear in a man I had never heard fear from before. "Rose left something for you." I opened it this morning because I heard what happened. You need to come to my office immediately. What are you talking about? I asked. My voice sounded rough even to me. Not on the phone. He said, listen carefully. Do not tell Emily. Do not tell Grant. Do not go home first. Come straight to me. If they know what Rose left, you could be in danger. Julien, my wife is being buried in an hour. I said, I know. He said quietly, and I am telling you Rose believed someone close to her might try to make sure you never learn the truth. To understand why that call turned my blood cold, you need to know what had been happening in the months before Rose died. It started small. Rose began waking up groggy, like she had not slept at all. She complained that her heart fluttered sometimes. She said the kitchen lights looked too bright in the mornings. Her doctor adjusted her blood pressure medication and told her to keep a symptom log. Emily began coming by twice a week to help fill Rose's pill organizer. She said it was safer that way. She said patients missed doses all the time and that she knew medication routines because of her background in elder care. Rose trusted her. I trusted Rose. One Tuesday in October, I came home early from a job estimate and found Grant alone in our dining room with a stack of bank papers spread across the table. He jumped when I walked in. Then he smiled and said he was helping Rose compare home equity rates because property taxes were going up. I remember asking where Rose was. He said she was lying down because she had a headache. About a week before she died, Rose asked me if I remembered signing a revised financial power of attorney. I told her I did not. She frowned and said Emily had mentioned bringing something over just in case while Rose was foggy one afternoon. Then she shook her head and said maybe she was mixing things up. She did not like feeling confused, and I did not like seeing her scared. The morning Rose collapsed. I had gone to the hardware store on Morse Road to buy a breaker switch. I was gone less than 20 minutes. When I got home, Emily was already in the kitchen, crying into her phone, and Grant was standing by the back door with his arms crossed. Rose was on the floor, the pill organizer open on the counter beside her. The paramedics worked on her all the way to Riverside Methodist Hospital. They let me hold her hand for a few seconds in the emergency room before a nurse guided me out. By late afternoon, she was gone. Back in that funeral home hallway, with Julian's warning still in my ear, those little moments lined up inside my head like nails on a workbench. The bank papers, the pill organizer, Rose asking about signatures, Grant watching me too carefully, Emily arriving before the ambulance as if she had expected the call. I went back into the chapel and sat through the rest of the service without hearing a word. When it was over, people started moving toward their cars for the burial at Union Cemetery. Emily came up to me and pressed her hand against my arm. Dad, are you okay? She asked. But I remembered Julian's voice. Do not tell Emily. Do not tell Grant. So I said, I have to handle some paperwork from your mother's office. I will meet you at the house after. Emily blinked once. Too slowly. Right now, it won't take long. I said. Grant stepped closer. What kind of paperwork? Insurance? I lied. Nothing important. He studied my face for half a second too long. Then he smiled. We can go with you. Gal, you shouldn't be alone today. I need to do it myself. Emily's fingers tightened on my sleeve. Then let go. Okay. Dad, call me if you need anything. Mercer and Vale Development was on the 12th floor of a brick and glass building near East Broad Street and 3rd. Close enough to the State House that you could see the dome from Julian's corner office. Rose used to point to that building whenever we passed it and say, there is my second kitchen. She spent more waking hours there than anywhere except our house. I parked in the garage at 1226 p.m. and walked through the lobby, still wearing my funeral suit. The security guard at the desk recognized me from company Christmas parties. His name was Leon. He looked at my face and did not ask questions. I had just reached the elevator when the front doors opened behind me and a woman's voice cut across the lobby. I am her daughter. I have a right to go upstairs. I stopped moving. Emily stood at the security desk, breathing hard, cheeks flushed from the cold. Grant was behind her with one hand on his phone and the other clenched at his side. They were supposed to be at the cemetery. They were supposed to be standing beside Rose's grave. Instead, they were here. Less than an hour after Julian told me not to tell them anything. I stepped behind a marble column near the elevators and watched them through the lobby plants. Emily leaned over the desk, talking fast. Grant kept scanning the room. Once. His eyes moved right past my hiding place, and I held my breath like a child. Leon shook his head and picked up the phone. Emily snapped something I could not hear. Grant touched her elbow and whispered sharply, "Keep your voice down." That was all I needed to see. I slipped into the elevator with 2 office workers and rode up to the 12th floor. My reflection in the metal doors looked older than it had that morning. Julian was waiting when the doors opened. He was tall, silver-haired, and usually looked like he had been born in a press suit. That day, his collar was open and his face was pale. "Did you see them?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Why are they here?" His jaw tightened. "Because I made a mistake. I called your house first this morning. Before I reached your cell," Emily answered. "I only said Rose had left something in my office that needed your attention. I did not give details. Apparently, that was enough." I felt something heavy drop inside me. Enough for what Julian looked toward the elevators. Then back at me. Enough for them to try to get it before you did. Julian opened his office door, locked it behind us, and walked to a wall safe hidden behind a painting of the Kyoto Mile. From the safe, he removed a large brown envelope with my name written across it in Rose's careful handwriting. "For Calvin only. If something happens to me." My knees weakened. I sat down before he told me to. "She brought this to me 18 days before she died," Julian said. "She told me not to open it unless something happened to her. She also told me that if I ever had to give it to you, I should make sure you were not alone with Emily or Grant afterward." I took the envelope. My fingers felt numb. Inside was a handwritten letter, a small flash drive, copies of bank statements, 2 pharmacy receipts, and a sealed plastic bag containing what looked like 3 small white tablets. I stared at them, not understanding, and understanding all at once. She wrote that she had noticed money missing from our retirement account in July. At first, it was $4. Babe. Then $9. Lube. Then $15. Ling ling ling. By October, more than $52. 000 had been moved out through online authorizations using a power of attorney document she did not remember signing. She wrote that the document had my signature on it too. But the C in Calvin looked wrong. She knew my handwriting better than any bank did. She had watched me sign Christmas cards, school forms, mortgage papers, and birthday checks for 35 years. She wrote that Emily became defensive when Rose asked about the account. Grant told her she was confused because of her medication. After that, Emily insisted on managing the pills herself. Then came the sentence that made my throat close. "Cal, I think someone is trying to make me look too sick to fight them." Julian sat across from me and said nothing while I read. He had tears in his eyes, but he kept his voice steady. "The drive has more," he said. "Rose copied everything she could before she got too frightened to keep the files at home." He plugged the flash drive into a laptop that had never been connected to the company network. Because Rose had asked him to be careful, folder be folder. My wife's last week's opened on the screen. The first folder held bank statements with transfers circled in red. The money had gone into an account tied to a limited liability company Grant had created after his fitness studio failed. The company name was bright and meaningless. To the kind of name people use when they want a loan officer to think they still have a plan. The second folder held photographs Rose had taken of her pill organizer on different days. In some compartments, there were tablets that did not match her prescribed medication. Rose had written notes underneath each photo. "Not mine. Appeared after Emily filled box. Made me sleep until noon. Heart racing later." The third folder held a screenshot from Emily's old tablet. Rose had found it in a kitchen drawer, still logged into a messaging app. The conversation was between Emily and Grant. Emily had written, "Mom asked about the retirement transfer again. She knows something," Grant replied. "Then stop treating her like she is fragile and start making sure she stays confused. Once Dad signs the house papers, it won't matter." Emily answered, "I hate this." Grant wrote, "You hate being broke more." Then Julian opened the last screenshot. It was from a message between Grant and someone named Tessa RX. Grant had written, "Can the extra ones hurt her if they build up?" The reply said, "At her age, they will call it her heart. Just do not dump them all at once." Julian came around the desk and put a hand on my shoulder. "Calvin, Rose wanted you protected." She was scared, but she was clear. She said if anything happened, the first thing they would do is try to control you, the house, and the story. I sat there in that expensive office in my funeral suit, holding my dead wife's letter, while my daughter and son-in-law were downstairs trying to steal the proof she had left behind. "Who is Tessa?" I asked. Julian shook his head. "I do not know. But Rose wrote a note on the back of one receipt. She thought it might be Grant's cousin, a pharmacy technician in Westerville." Julian called someone he knew from years of property disputes and corporate fraud cases. Her name was Mara Keene, a retired Franklin County Sheriff's detective who now worked as a private investigator. She arrived within 50 minutes. She was in her late 50s, short, calm, and had the kind of eyes that made lying feel pointless. Mara reviewed the letter, the bank records, the messages, and the pharmacy receipts. She asked me a few careful questions about Rose's symptoms and who had access to the house. Then she said the sentence that changed the next month of my life. "This is strong enough to take seriously," Mara said. "But if you want them convicted, not just questioned, we need admissible records, a handwriting expert, and something fresh. People like Grant talk when they believe the old man is already beaten." The plan was simple and cruel. I had to go home and act like I knew nothing. I had to let Emily and Grant believe I was grieving, confused, and ready to lean on them. Mara would work with Julian's attorney to preserve the digital evidence, contact law enforcement quietly, and start the process for official records. Meanwhile, with my written consent, she would place 2 small cameras in my house. I agreed before she finished. For the next 13 days, I lived inside the worst performance of my life. Emily came over with soup, binders, and soft little questions. Grant brought forms. He talked about probate, taxes, market timing, and how difficult it would be for me to maintain a house alone. "The place is too much for one person," he said one night, looking around our living room as if he were already measuring it for someone else. No shame in simplifying, Emily sat beside me on the couch and touched my wrist. "Mom would not want you overwhelmed." Mara collected records quietly. The bank confirmed the power of attorney had been used to authorize transfers totaling $52. A document examiner said my signature and Rose's signature showed multiple signs of tracing. Julian's attorney found that Grant's failed business owed back rent, private loans, and credit card balances that added up to nearly $118. Ling ling ling. The pressure on them had been real, so had the choice they made. The pharmacy records took longer. Mara would not tell me everything while the police were still deciding their next steps. But she did tell me that Rose's refills had been irregular, and that certain medication had been picked up by someone who was not Rose. The name on 2 pickups was Emily Bennett Larkin. On the 14th evening, Emily and Grant came over with takeout from a place on Bethel Road that Rose used to like. I barely ate. I told them I was exhausted and went upstairs at 8:15, leaving them in the kitchen with a folder of house documents Grant had brought. The camera caught everything. For 7 minutes, they spoke about nothing. Food, weather, whether I was sleeping enough. Then Grant said, "He is almost there." Emily said, "He looked awful tonight." "Good." Grant answered, "Awful signs papers. Alert asks questions." Emily started crying. "Don't say it like that." "Like what?" "Like we meant for Mom to die." There was a pause. On the video, Grant lowered his voice, but the microphone caught him clearly. "We meant for her to stop interfering. There is a difference. She was my mother," Emily said, "and she was about to send us both to prison." Grant snapped. "You saw the statement folder. You saw her taking pictures. If she had gotten to your father first, we were done." Emily whispered. "Tessa said it would just make her tired." Grant laughed once, sharp and ugly. "Tessa said a lot of things. You still put the pills in the box." That was the moment my daughter covered her face with both hands and said, I only did what you told me. I watched the footage the next morning in Julian's office with Mara beside me and two Columbus police detectives across the desk. Nobody spoke until the recording ended. Detective Neil, a square-shouldered man with a gray mustache, said, "Mr. Bennett, I know this is hard, but this gives us a path." The detectives did not arrest them that day. They wanted the case clean. They obtained warrants. They interviewed the pharmacy technician, Tessa Larkin, who turned out to be Grant's cousin. They requested a deeper medical review. They secured bank records, phone records, message, and the original power of attorney form from the bank. The door opened at the reading of Rose's will. Our family attorney, Claire Whitman, had handled our estate papers for years out of a small office near Grandview Heights. Rose trusted her. I trusted her. Emily and Grant believed the will reading would be a formality. They believed I was close to selling the house. They believed the power of attorney would help them push me if I hesitated. They did not know Julian would be there. They did not know Mara would be in the conference room next door. They did not know two detectives were parked outside in an unmarked sedan, waiting for the signal. The meeting was set for 10:00 on a Tuesday morning. Emily arrived in a black dress. Neat and pale, Grant wore a navy suit and carried a leather folder. He kissed my shoulder like a son and told me, "We'll get through this together." Claire began with the usual formal language. She confirmed Rose's name, the date of the will, and the fact that I was the primary beneficiary. Emily looked bored. Grant looked patient. They were waiting for the part where I would say I needed help. They had trained me for that moment for 2 weeks. Then Claire folded her hands and said, "Before we continue, Mr. Bennett has asked to address a separate matter involving documents submitted after July." Grant's eyes moved to me. "Your mother left me a letter," I said to Emily. Her face changed before she could stop it. A tiny flinch, a blink, a daughter's mask cracking just enough for a father to see what was underneath. Grant said, "Gal, maybe this isn't the time." "This is exactly the time," I said. The side door opened. Julian walked in first, carrying a laptop. Mara followed him. Then Detective Neil and his partner. Grant stood up halfway, then sat back down as if his body could not decide what lie to become. Emily whispered, "Dad, what is this?" "This," I said, "is what your mother was brave enough to leave behind." Julian placed the laptop on the table and played the kitchen footage. No introduction. No explanation. Just Emily's voice filling the room. "Don't say it like we meant for Mom to die." Then Grant's voice. "We meant for her to stop interfering." Then Emily again. "I only did what you told me." The conference room went so quiet I could hear the heating system click inside the wall. Emily's face collapsed first. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Grant leaned back and said, "That is illegally recorded." Mara answered before I could. "It was recorded in Mr. Bennett's home with his written consent. You were not in a private space. You can discuss that with your attorney." Detective Neil stepped forward. "Grant Larkin, Emily Larkin, we have warrants for both of you. Stand up slowly and keep your hands where we can see them." Emily looked at me then. Really looked at me. Not as a mark. Not as an old man. Not as a grieving widower. But as her father. "Dad," she said, and the word came out broken. "I didn't think she would die. Your mother packed your lunches until you were 16. I said, "She worked overtime to pay for your nursing classes. She sat beside you after your miscarriage and held you all night. And you measured her life against your debt." Emily sobbed and Grant said nothing. Men like him always have speeches until the room contains handcuffs. The detectives took them out through the back entrance. Claire cried quietly at the table. Julian stood beside me without touching me, which I appreciated. Sometimes support is just staying close enough that a man does not have to fall in public. The legal process took months. I will not pretend it healed anything. It did not. It only named what had happened. Emily pled guilty to forgery, theft from a person in a protected class, and reckless involvement in the medication tampering. She received 5 years in state prison after agreeing to testify about Grant and Tessa. People have asked me if I forgave her because she cooperated. The honest answer is no. Cooperation after capture is not courage. It is math. Grant went to trial. The medical review and toxicology findings showed unsafe levels of a heart-related medication in Rose's system that did not match her prescriptions. Investigators tied the extra pills to Tessa's access at the pharmacy and to pickups linked to Emily, Grant's message. The forged documents, the transfers, and the kitchen recording did the rest. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, forgery, and financial exploitation. He received 14 years. With the money the court returned, I started a small fund in Rose's name through a local patient assistance program for older adults who need help managing prescriptions and follow-up appointments. It is not a grand foundation. It is not the kind of thing that makes the evening news. It pays for pill reviews, transportation, and nurse visits for people who might otherwise be alone with bottles they do not understand. I think about the funeral hallway often, Julian's shaking voice, the rain on the chapel windows, Emily sitting in the front row with dry eyes, Grant, watching his phone like a man waiting for a package to arrive. I think about how close they came to controlling everything. The money, the house, the story, maybe even me. But Rose knew. She saw the shape of the betrayal before I did. And even while she was frightened, even while her own body was being turned against her, she built a path for the truth to reach me. My wife's last act was not fear. It was protection. And my last promise to her was justice. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment and tell me which moment hit you hardest. Was it Rose leaving the envelope in Julian's safe? Emily showing up at the office instead of the cemetery? Or the kitchen recording that finally broke their lies open? Hit the like button if you want more stories like this. And subscribe to Dad's Cold Justice. Sometimes a subscription feels like nothing to you, but it helps us keep telling stories where the truth does not stay buried. I will see you in the next one.